All right, good afternoon, everybody. House General Laws, Professions, Occupations, and Administrative Process Subcommittee will come to order. Clerk, I believe we have a quorum. Clerk will call the roll. Clerk will close the roll. All right, we have a lot of bills ahead of us, and we also have a bit of a time crunch because of the Housing Subcommittee and the extra time that they need, and we are all very busy in the middle of this General Assembly session, so we're going to try and move as fast as we can, knowing that there are a lot of amendments to our bills on this docket. So please, patrons, if you can, be prepared to succinctly and completely explain any amendments or substitutes that you have for the subcommittee, just so that we might be able to dispose of your bill as efficiently as possible. We will start first with Delegate Herring, House Bill 1042. Delegate Herring, please tell us what your bill does for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. This bill establishes the Virginia Council on Environmental Justice, codifying the advisory body, which consists of 27 members, which will advise the governor and provide recommendations to maintain a foundation of environmental justice principles intended to protect vulnerable communities and disproportionate impacts on populations and pollution and displacement. This bill includes language that specifies that council membership shall be representative of traditionally underserved and underrepresented groups, including Native tribes, grassroots organizations, civil rights advocates, and members of impacted communities. The proposal codifies the existing council body that was established first by Governor McAuliffe and now by Governor Northam. The proposal delegates the Secretary of Natural Resources and the Governor's Office as providing staff support and administrative support. And the bill will also define the concept of environmental justice and resilience for the first time in Virginia. And that's the bill.
Thank you, Delegate Herring. Any members of the subcommittee have questions for the patron? Delegate Cole.
Yeah, just to make sure I understand what we're talking about, could you define environmental justice?
Right. So if we...
Delegate Cole, if you could just please, as a point of order, make sure that you refer all questions to the chairman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Delegate Herring.
Well, I would point the delegate to lines 19 through 21 of the bill. Environmental justice means the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, faith, national origin, or income, regarding the development, implementation, or enforcement of any environmental law, regulation, or policy.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other members of the subcommittee wish to ask the patron? Delegate Murphy.
I'd like to ask, is there a cost associated with this?
There is a cost. It's minimal. I believe it's approximately $20,000, and it will be it's part of the Secretariat's budget, so there's no budget amendment or appropriated amount needed.
Thank you.
Yes, for further clarification, Delegate Murphy, we do not have a notice here if we report this bill, to refer to appropriations. Other members of the subcommittee wish to ask questions to the patron? All right, any members of the audience who wish to speak in favor of the bill, please come and state your name and your position.
Thank you, Delegate. Mr. Chairman, Miriam Karad from the Governor's Office, and this is an administration's bill, and we support the bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Jay Ford, Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and we strongly support the measure.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Danielle Sims from the Junior League of Conservation Voters. We also support the bill.
Mr. Chairman, Glenn Bess, volunteer with the Sierra Club Good Government Subcommittee of our Legislative Committee, and we support the bill as well. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak in favor of House Bill 1042? Anybody wish to speak in opposition to 1042, please come to the podium. All right, Delegate Herring, you have the last word.
I just ask that you support this bill.
All right, thank you, Delegate Herring. Committee operates by motion. All right, we have a motion to report, properly seconded to report House Bill 1042. Everybody, please vote using the electronic voting board. The clerk will close the roll. Your bill reports 6-2. Thank you, Delegate Herron. All right, Delegate Krizek, please come up and tell us your House bill and what it does. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 1424. This bill establishes the Virginia Revolutionary Semi-Quincentennial Commission to plan, develop, and perform programs and activities to commemorate the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution, the Revolutionary War, and the independence of the United States. This commission aims, in which that semi-quincentennial, for those that don't know their history, that takes place in 2026. So it's coming up quite quickly, and it's time to get the planning started. That's what the commission does. So it aims to celebrate the contributions of the Commonwealth of Virginia and its citizens who played a critical role in the Revolutionary War and the founding of this great country. The 250th anniversary of the Revolutionary War provides an opportunity for all Virginians and Americans to commemorate together the principles of independence, individual liberty, representative government, and the attainment of equal rights which unite us all. There is a second bill, and we are working together to come up with a unified one that will be the vehicle that will go forward. It's
Delegate Krizek, you're referring to a Senate bill that's identical?
Delegate Plum has a bill, which I think is next on your docket.
Yes, I see. Okay. All right. Any members of the subcommittee have any questions for Delegate Krizek? Okay. Any members of the audience who wish to speak in favor of the bill? Anybody here wish to speak in opposition to this bill? Delegate Krizek, I only see Delegate Plum docketed for one bill here, and that's on a plastic advisory council.
Well, I apologize. I got different information. I do know that he has a bill that's very similar to this, and we just have to get them together, and his bill can be the one that goes through, as he's got
All right.
a lot more seniority than I do.
Thank you. Delegate Van Valkenburg? No? Okay. Now, if anybody wishes to speak in opposition or in favor of the bill, please come to the podium at this time. Seeing none, we do have a letter to report if it's a pleasure of the subcommittee and refer to appropriations. Delegate Krizek, any final words?
I think we can, and that's where we can fix it. We can get the two bills.
Okay.
in
Sounds good.
conformity. Thank you.
All right. I hear a move to report and refer to appropriations. Second. With a proper second. So, members of the subcommittee, please indicate your vote on the electronic voting board. Clerk will close the roll. Your bill reports out 8-0. Thank you, Delegate Krizek. Delegate McQuinn. You have House Bill 1519. Good to see you, Delegate McQuinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good to be here. Okay, hold that. Thank you. Mr. Chair and members of the committee, my House Bill 1519, it is a bill asking for a commission at the price for 2 years at the budget price of $200,000 to study the slavery, the issue of Jim Crow, the Black Code, and massive resistance. It is asking for this commission to be made up of, shall consist of 11 members, including 3 legislative members and 8 non-legislative members. They will be appointed by the House and by the Senate, and as well as the governor's office. Now, the reason that I'm asking for this commission, and I'll share with you some of the powers of the duties of the commission, because the issue of slavery and Black Code, Jim Crow, and massive resistance have been something that's long been discussed. Matter of fact, since 1609, when the first ship of enslaved Africans touched the shores of Virginia, America and the Commonwealth have benefited in many ways and have been a part of the oppressive and peculiar institution that African Americans had to endure. Many things were taken from them. The playing field was never or has never been leveled, and there are many generations who are still trying to or wondering what has created the situations that many of them are living in. And so I'm asking that we will have an opportunity to look at this whole issue, to look at that peculiar institution and begin to better understand it, understand the inequities in housing, employment, education, the economic opportunities, the generational wealth or poverty, the voting rights, and the criminal justice system. And so as we look at that, I'm hoping that the end result will bring about substantial information that will help us all to better understand the role that this Commonwealth played in slavery, in Jim Crow, in the Black Code, and in massive resistance. Again, creating generations of individuals who are living in poverty, who have lived in poverty and continue to live in it. Again, it is the budget amendment for it is $200,000, and this will be a 2-year study.
All right, thank you, Delegate McQuinn. Just so the committee knows, if we do choose to report this bill, we will be referring it to appropriations. Any members of the committee have any questions for the patron, Delegate Fowler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate McQuinn, I was just looking through the summary here, and it mentions obviously a lot of things about slavery, subsequent state sanctioned, racial and economic discrimination, et cetera. And then it says make recommendations to General Assembly on appropriate remedies. Do you have any idea of what remedies we might be looking at?
Well, that's why we are asking that a study would be done, and mine's greater than mine and my pay scale to come to the table, Mr. Chair, and address that issue. And again, you would have individuals who would come to the table, who would be at that table of scholars and historians, individuals who have worked long and hard on better understanding, again, the challenge and in many ways the sin of America, and how we've got there, and what for those individuals that were mostly impacted by this, where do we go from here?
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Simon?
Mr. Chairman, I probably should wait and speak to this, but there's been a brief pause. Not that Delegate McQuinn needs any help in answering this question, but I would just say to Delegate Fowler, like, for example, we've got some bills already coming through this session. In my subcommittee, we heard a bill, Mr. Chairman, that dealt with the issue of racial covenants, which were used for years as a legal way to keep people from moving into their property. And we've developed a new form for actually removing those covenants from the land records so that people can do that. So that'd be an example, I would imagine. That's just one area, but that would be an example, I would imagine, of what the Commission would be looking at and things like that need remedies. And they've been difficult problems to solve over the years, but we can come up with some creative solutions.
Thank you, Delegate Simon.
All right. Do any members of the audience wish to speak in favor of this bill? Please come to the podium.
Mr. Chairman, Glenn Best is speaking as a private citizen and as a constituent of Delegate McQuinn's. I attended public school in Virginia from the 2nd grade through the 7th grade. By virtue of my age, I was attending those segregated schools. There's obviously many inequities, legacy of slavery, Jim Crow, and even up until the massive resistance and to today. For those reasons, I would urge your favorable support report of this bill. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much. And for all of those who wish to speak on this bill, just make sure that you're not repeating any comments that have been made previously so that we're not duplicative here. Speak from the heart, too, and try and keep your comments as brief and to the point as possible. But thank you very much for coming.
Hello. Mr. Chairman, my name is Dr. Janice Underwood. I am Virginia's first and the nation's first Chief Diversity Officer, and I represent the Northam Administration. We strongly support this bill.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Ben Campbell. I've been on Richmond Slave Trail Commission for 20 years. The issue here is identifying some of the structural inequities that got baked into the system that began in 1619 in such a way that they don't just show up on our legislative books, but in fact were part of the early plan which preached equity, but in fact practiced inequity. A lot of these things no longer have race names on them, but we're still seeing the results of them, and we can't fix them instantly. But to identify them as a state so that we can in fact begin further to remedy the situations of inequity in which we found ourselves.
Thank you, sir.
I'm the Reverend Sylvester Turner. I serve on the Slave Trail Commission for the City of Richmond, but more importantly, I serve individuals in a community that's been impacted by this history. So the need to do a study to show how this history have impacted them is critical. So I support this bill.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Reverend Rosalind Hall. I am the chair of the Advocacy and Outreach for the Baptist Ministers Conference of Richmond and vicinity for jails and prisons, and I strongly support this bill.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Laura Nath Lee. I am a native and a citizen of Virginia, Chesterfield County. I teach at the University of Richmond in the Jepson School of Leadership Studies, and I serve on numerous boards and commissions here. I have come into contact with students at various institutions, Old Dominion, VCU, Virginia Union, John Tyler, and now University of Richmond, who really don't know how slavery has impacted our society. I see a serious need to have a study that helps communities across the Commonwealth to disseminate this information. I strongly support HB 1519.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Christopher Rashad Green. I'm an organizer with New Virginia Majority, and I strongly support this bill. As one who has been impacted by this, me, my family, and hundreds of community members, we look forward to this study. We support it, and I look forward to working with the Honorable Ms. McQuinn here and going forward. I really strongly support 1519. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Faith Harris. I am the Vice Chair of Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy, and we want to acknowledge our support for the bill, strong support for the bill, recognizing the importance of a study that provides not just an opportunity for more research for those of us who like to do research, but also an opportunity for the citizens of Virginia to understand its history in a deeper and more reflective way. And thank you so much for the opportunity today to testify.
Thank you for coming. Anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in opposition to House Bill 1519? All right, Delegate McQuinn, any final thoughts for us?
Mr. Chair, I just finally want to say that I am reminded in 2007 when the Commonwealth of Virginia, there was apology from the governor for the participation in Virginia's participation in enslavement of Africa, and that was done in 2007, which was a good step in the right way, but there is much more to be done. And I think that if we do this and move forward, that it would be an awesome step for Virginia to take place in light of what has happened in the past. And so at this time, I just ask that the committee would support this and move it forward.
Does the committee have a motion?
Move to report.
Second.
We need to also refer. We
have to refer? All right. Move to report and refer. Mr. Chairman.
All right, we have a proper motion to report and refer to appropriations with a second House Bill 1519. All members, please vote on their electronic voting machine. Clerk will close the roll. Your bill reports out 8-0. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee.
All right, next up, we will go in the queue. Delegate McNamara, House Bill 222.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, House Bill 222 is a total compensation disclosure statement. Sometimes a picture is worth many words. So all of you should have passed out to you a 2020 total compensation statement. This is what just a concept of what this bill is trying to accomplish. Essentially, this bill requires Human Resources to create a total compensation package in hard copy to be distributed to all the employees of the Commonwealth, either with their benefits enrollment package or perhaps during a review of a performance review on an annual basis. The reason this information exists currently, everything that's on this statement exists. The issue is, and many of us, I might ask you without answering obviously, but many people have gone to MyVRS and you're looking at your investments and where your money goes and how it's being allocated. Many of you may go to Payline, which shows your expense reports and what's been paid or hasn't been paid, your check stubs, but probably many of you have never been to Employee Direct. And unfortunately, I think that's probably the case with the vast majority of employees. So even though this information is out there, they don't realize that information is out there. It's important, in my opinion and my belief, first of all, this is something, if you looked at the JLARC study from about a year, I think it was 2 years ago, and Virginia actually, from a Commonwealth standpoint, our pay is actually slightly below some of our peer groups. But our compensation packages is slightly above our peer groups. And I think it's important not only from a retention of our best employees that they understand and recognize the true value of their benefits, but it's also a benefit to the employees. I can think we implemented, when I say we, the Roanoke County implemented something similar to this in the late 90s. And we were having a lot of trouble, particularly with CDL, our trash truck drivers and anything that required a CDL in Parks and Rec, and they were leaving and going to some of the construction companies, the highway companies. And what was happening is, I'm making up the numbers to illustrate a picture, but let's say they were making $20 or $22 an hour in Roanoke County, but they could go to Joe's Hauling and make $24 or $26 an hour. The economy was good. They make that jump, not realizing the value of some of the benefits that they were leaving behind that did not exist in their new employment. So I see it as a win-win situation. I am thrilled to have Delegate Carr as the chief co-patron on this legislation. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I would ask for your support.
All right, thank you, Delegate McNamara. We have a few who wish to speak. Delegate Tran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question for the patron?
Delegate Tran.
Do you know if the department has all of this information in one system, or are they in multiple systems that they have to draw from? And if the latter, are those systems integrated to collect the data, and whether or not there's a FIS attached to this?
Yeah. So I met over the summer with the Department of Human Resources, and I understand they're transitioning to a new system, and I left my notes upstairs, what the new system is, but the information's all there. So many of if the Commonwealth employees go to Employee Direct right now, the vast majority of this information is already there. It's just pulling that information, creating that Word document, and sharing it with them in a hard copy. That my opinion is very, very important. It's a critical missing step.
Delegate Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have some concerns about the bill. One, I think it's certainly the information is good and valuable and needs to be made available, and I think it already is available to employees. However, I'm concerned about the requirement that it be given to all employees annually via hard copy. This is just another piece of paper that employees are going to get some way or another, and will probably, if they're not paying attention to the information on the web now, you're just going to have another piece of paper that gets discarded. Remember when I was in the Navy used to do this every now and then. They would hand out to all the sailors all these wonderful benefits the Navy were providing. And, especially the younger employees, they care about what they take home in their paycheck and not necessarily realize the long-term benefits of their benefits. But so I don't know that it's going to have a significant impact on employee retention. And I think it's just another thing that HR is going to have to do. And really, I think we need to transition away from paper and have less paper rather than more paper.
Delegate McNamara, any response?
Yeah, I think your point is very appropriate. And so if I would, Mr. Chair, to Delegate Cole, when you were in the Navy, the younger people especially just seem to care about what's on their paycheck. And that's why something like this is really very important, because they don't realize what's on their paycheck is only 2/3 or 60% of what their total compensation package is. I think I can speak from experience in the private. First of all, it is being done on paper in some areas of the Commonwealth currently, but and it's also being done on paper on a recruitment basis in the Commonwealth currently. Within Roanoke County, I can tell you there was a number of people that honestly had no idea the true value of health insurance, if I may use that as an example. And when they got this paper, and all of a sudden Joe's Holland gave them single person coverage versus family coverage, they started to realize that they weren't comparing equal scenarios, and we really were helping the employee just as much as we were helping the county of Roanoke.
Is there a representative from DHRM who might be able to speak toward any potential fiscal impact and also to any additional reporting items that are in this bill that aren't currently provided in the online portal?
Yes, sir. Carol Rauschberg with the Department of Human Resource Management. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. We were directed in the Appropriation Act in 2010 to provide a total compensation statement. That information, as the delegate mentioned, is available through the employee portal. We feel as though with best practices that citizens are already accessing wage statements and bank statements and so on and so forth, applications for employment through online applications. And there are a couple of items that are not currently available on the total compensation statement, but because we are transitioning to Cardinal, there would be a fiscal impact for us to make changes in programming, and that couldn't occur until after Cardinal is, we stand up Cardinal.
Any questions for the witness? Delegate Tran?
Ma'am, thank you so much. I was reading the FIS that came with this bill, and it says that Cardinal is not going to be online until October of 2021.
That's correct.
So and since you're transitioning out, for me, the transitive property would be that you would wait to enact, if this bill passes, wait to enact this bill until Cardinal goes into effect so that you don't have to make any changes to a current system that is going to be offline, correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
There
would be obviously some programming. There would be at least $500,000 or more to reprogram Cardinal because it's not in the new human resource capital system.
Just to follow up.
Delegate Tran?
I think the FIS said that the $500,000 would be required in order to mass produce these types of hard copy reports versus entering each employee one by one. And I'm assuming that the state has thousands of state employees?
Absolutely.
Okay,
yes,
thank
but
you.
every employee in our database has access to the total compensation statement that was required in 2010, and they can get that information online.
Delegate Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for the witness. Can you just clarify for me? So in that fiscal statement, and maybe this is off topic, but it says that the PMIS system, you have to do it manually one by one, right? So each employee, you would go to the thing and you'd print it. Is that going to be true of the new system? Because that seems like a Bill idea.
Well, I mean, right? We don't have the ability to print all of these. Either each agency would have to print them for the employees, or somebody would have to do it. Obviously, there'd be cost to do that as well, and to mail.
Delegate Simon.
So, Mr. Chairman, I guess I would ask, it sounds like, in reading the fiscal impact statement, that you guys are transitioning to a system that actually is sort of a paperless looking system, and to actually kind of have to go backwards and take a step backwards to make this now a paper-based is where the extra $500,000 would come, because the direction that the agency is moving is towards being more paperless and less paper intensive. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Any further questions for our witness here from DHRM? Delegate Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So can I just kind of drill down on that real quick and just, I assume maybe you were already doing this, but maybe a way of getting at the delegates' concerns are when that new system comes online, having some kind of publicity, PSA is maybe the wrong word, but PSA, so that people know that they should be looking for that.
I think that has already occurred when we went with the employee web portal. And I know that all of the independent and legislative and judicial agencies were given instructions as well to let their employees know that the information that's on our website is available to them through the employee web portal.
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Van Valkenburg.
I have a motion when it's appropriate.
At the appropriate time. Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Delegate McNamara, any response to that conversation?
The thought was to implement it in conjunction with the new system. The fiscal impact statement hadn't posted when I last looked, so the $500,000 certainly surprises me. If something is there and you just want to print it out and include it in your enrollment materials on an annual basis.
All right. Is anybody in the audience here to speak in favor of House Bill 222? Please come to the podium. Any opposed to House Bill 222? All right. Considering you just had the last word, the committee operates by motion. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we gently lay this on the table and work on trying to figure out a way to ensure that people know that they should go there to find this information.
We have a motion and a second to gently lay House Bill 222 on the table. Really, whatever adverb you want to use, I suppose. Members will indicate their vote on the electronic voting board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Clerk will close the roll. Vote is 7-1 to lay House Bill 222 on the table. Delegate Plum. Delegate Plum, you have House Bill 1354, and just so members know, if we report favorably on this bill, we have a request to refer it to appropriations. Delegate Plum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I think your staff may have, do you have a substitute or line amendments? Substitute, okay. So the substitute, if you would adopt the substitute, I'd be most appreciative.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I've never been in a committee room where I'm on the camera like this. This is really quite nice.
Mr. Chairman, I can tell you professionally, it's something that can be quite addicting. So.
Yes, really. I can believe that. That means I'll introduce more bills next time.
Please, I think our council is already working hard enough. But while this substitute is being passed out, and we will make a motion to adopt it soon, why don't you just tell us briefly what the substitute does and how it differs?
Right. The substitute takes into account some of the stakeholders' interest in how it is that we position ourselves in looking at the future of plastics. Now, I don't need to go through an exposition to you to know how it is that the plastics, in terms of pollutions, are affecting us in the water systems and so on. A number of citizen groups are, of course, involved. You've got a lot of legislation before the legislature now to put fees on plastic bags and that sort of thing. What this attempts to do is bring together the various stakeholders involved in the industry cycle totally to figure out ways that we can look at waste, not look at plastics, for example, not simply as pollutants, but rather as waste commodities. And what I mean by that is that a number of people in the industry now are looking at achieving plastic packaging circular economy industry standards. And what that simply means is that going forward, you would have more people in the industry looking at how it is that we would dispose of the various elements. A very simple example of what happened here in Virginia, you know, the plastic grocery bags that we find so intimidating so on are great for recycling. Out at Winchester, I visited a plant when it first opened where they took the plastic bags, mixed them up with sawdust and made Trex lumber. And that, of course, has become a growing stand. what we need to do is to stay ahead of the standard. We'll do what we will with the other bills that are before us, but I think what we need to do is take a long-range view of how it is, and we can work with the various stakeholders to turn not simply waste into a pollutant, but into a commodity to the degree that that's possible.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ashley and Brooks, it looks like our friend Scott Meacham drafted the substitute, but it seems to me like the major change is changing it from plastic pollution to plastic waste. Is that right, Council? Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's right. Is that right, Mr. Chairman?
That's correct. And let me say that may seem like a little minor difference, but it really is a philosophical difference in terms of how it is you deal with plastics.
Understood. All right.
Yeah.
Do we have a motion to adopt the substitute? We have a motion and a second to adopt the substitute. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. So this substitute is properly before us. Mr. Chairman, you've done a good job of explaining the bill itself. Any further comments that you'd wish to make before we open it up?
All right. Take your questions.
Any questions for the patron? Seeing none, anyone in the audience here to speak in favor or in opposition to House Bill 1354? Please come to the podium.
Mr. Chairman, Brett Vassy, I'm the President and CEO of the Virginia Manufacturers Association. I want to thank Delegate Plum for working with us on these refinements, and we have no objections to the bill. We hope that you pass it.
Great, thank you. 1 second, Mr. Chairman. Got one more person behind you.
Oh, excuse me.
I'm Grace. I represent LCV, and we definitely support this bill heartily.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, any further comment?
No.
All right, committee operates by motion.
Move to report and refer.
All right, we have a motion to report and refer to appropriations with a proper second. House Bill 1354. Members will vote using their electronic voting machine.
Take me a second to get this one up with the substitute.
With the substitute, excuse me. All right, clerk will close the roll. That bill reports and refers with the substitute to appropriation 7-1. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Committee.
All right, up next, Delegate Willett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to confirm whether you have just an line amendment or an actual substitute for my bill, HB 935. Substitute, okay. So I have an amendment in the nature of the substitute.
Okay, we will be distributing the substitute to members of the subcommittee now. Why don't you, while that is being done, explain to us why we need the substitute and what the material differences are between your original bill.
I'll do that. It's actually just making two minor changes, and I can give you those if you have copies. Amendment 1 unstrikes lines 179 through 191. And then for those same lines, you'll see in the change here, moving to a quarterly requirement. That's on that's again at 179 to 191 range, and then that's a report that goes through the governor and then the chairman of the House committees. And then finally, Amendment 3, which is line 235, after finance, it inserts "and the director of the Department of Planning and Budget."
Okay, he's done a good job explaining the substitute. Do we have a motion to adopt the substitute?
So moved.
And seconded. All those in favor to adopt the substitute, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, now we have the substitute properly before us. Delegate Willett, please explain what your bill does.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. This bill, in a nutshell, is essentially going to improve the efficiency of the reporting requirements on the Virginia Economic Development Partnership. Over time, a number of different requirements have been put on them through statute, and what they've ended up with are redundant reporting requirements. This bill will it doesn't stop reporting, it consolidates reporting, and essentially is going to make it a more efficient process. It's also going to make it more transparent in the sense that those trying to follow what VEDP is doing now will not be looking at an overly voluminous number of reports. It'll be a more concise number and actually easier for them, easier for the reader to track. correspondingly less of a reporting burden on the staff of EDP. And I know they have plenty of things to do besides just write reports, so hopefully this will help them overall with their operations.
All right, thank you, Delegate Willett. Is there anybody from VEDP here to speak to the bill?
Right here.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. My name is Christy Morton with Virginia Economic Development Partnership. I want to thank Delegate Willett so much for working with us on this legislation. Over the years, as he stated, many requirements have been added to both the code and the budget for reporting, which is great. We love transparency and reporting. But what we found in recent years is that we're reporting the same information to the same people in multiple different reports. In one instance, for example, the COF, Commonwealth Opportunity Fund report, we're required to report it twice a year, and we're also required to report it 4 times a year to the same folks. And so we thought if we cleaned up the code a little bit and, and just go ahead and report 4 times a year. So that's an example of the types of things that this bill does. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Don't see anyone who requests to ask you a question, so thank you very much. Any questions for the patron? Seeing none, anybody else in the audience here to speak in favor or in opposition of House Bill 935? Again, seeing none, Delegate Willett, any final words?
No, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
All right, the committee operates by motion. We have a motion to report, and we will need to refer this to appropriations. Can we do that? All right, I hear a motion to report and refer to appropriations. I have a speaker's letter that it goes to appropriations. So that means it's got to go. So do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a second. All right. So we have a proper motion to report and refer to appropriations, the substitute for House Bill 935. And when the roll opens, please indicate your preference. All right, clerk will close the roll. The bill report and refers with the substitute to appropes 8-0. Thank you, Delegate Willett.
Thank you very much.
All right, next up we have Delegate Reed. Delegate Reed, any amendments or substitutes for your bill?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Lovely. All right, then go ahead and tell us what House Bill 990 does.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. House Bill 990 is about actually codifying Executive Order 20 from the governor that reassigns the Department of Military Affairs to the Secretariat of Veterans and Defense Affairs. And if you remember, this was something that the governor instituted back in September of 2019. And the intent of the executive order and this legislation to actually codify that is to actually better align the organizational alignment of DMA and the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, as their mission sets are really kind of indistinguishable. This also helps to align them with their federal counterparts. There were issues that were coming up where you actually had the Secretariat of Veterans and Defense Affairs when this was actually still underneath the Department of Homeland Security, having to have interactions with the Department of Defense and those type of things, then going back through the chain of command for the Department of Homeland Security and then coming back. And so he was playing this role of liaison, and this just basically codifies what was done on the Executive Order 20 and then streamlines that so that the Secretariat can then actually better address the veterans and military affairs of the people here in Virginia.
Thank you, Delegate Reed. Pretty clear explanation. I see no questions from the committee. Anybody in the audience here to speak in favor or in opposition to House Bill 990? Mr. Secretary, good to see you again.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Carlos Hopkins, Secretary of Veterans and Defense Affairs, and we appreciate the delegates' work on this bill, and we do support the bill. As he indicated, it makes my job a little bit easier when I reach out to our DoD counterparts, and I can include the National Guard in those discussions much more readily than we have in years past. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Anybody else in the audience? All right, committee operates by motion.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to report that's properly seconded, House Bill 990. All members will vote using their electronic voting board. Clerk will close the roll. Your bill reports, Delegate Reed, 8-0. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee.
All right, up next, Delegate Mugler. Delegate, do you have any amendments or a substitute for your bill?
I do not.
Oh, even better. Thank you, Delegate Mugler. Go ahead and tell us what House Bill 1431 does.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. This is a simple bill that clarifies the number of members on the Commonwealth's Art and Architectural Review Board, affecting the number that are required for a quorum and increases the number of members on the board. The Art and Architectural Board reviews and advises the governor on the acquisition and design of works of art, buildings, structures, and property owned by the Commonwealth of Virginia. The board meets year-round on a monthly basis, is currently comprised of 6 members, to include a designee of the Department of the Historic Resources and 5 citizen members appointed by the governor. In 2019, only 1 of the 11 meetings was attended by the entire board. The April meeting had to be canceled because they did not have a quorum, and the October meeting did not achieve a quorum either. 1 board member has recently submitted a resignation, and Department of General Services is working with the Secretary of Commonwealth to fill that position. The proposed amendments to the code would add 1 additional member to clarify all appointed members are voting members, and will outline how many members are required for that quorum, hopefully solving the quorum issues that they are having, and will help them to approve these projects in a timely manner. A technical amendment is also requested to remove a reference to specific division of DGS and leave the Department of General Services as being responsible to provide assistance to the board in undertaking its responsibilities.
Thank you, Delegate Mugler. Can a representative of DGS come up and explain, is this board not a fun board to be on, and that's why we have appointees that are resigning and missing meetings? I'm just curious what's going on, if this is isolated or whether there is such a chronic problem that requires us to make code changes.
Mr. Chair, members
Thank
of the
you.
committee, Sandra Gill, Department of General Services. It is a fun board to be on. It's very fun every month to see the presentations of the buildings being built. However, with commitments and full-time jobs, it's hard to attend sometimes.
Makes sense. Okay. Thank you very much. Any members of the committee? Delegate Tran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question for Ms. Sandra from
Delegate
DGS.
Tran? Yes. If you could please come back.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee.
Thank you. I was trying to wrap my mind around if it's hard for folks to come and attend meetings and you're having trouble making quorum. I'm sorry. Do you think you'll have trouble finding another member to add to the committee if there's already, you know what I mean, like a situation with the current members?
So great news. The member that recently resigned has just been replaced, and we've not updated Delegate Mugler's talking points on that. So no, we should be able to find members.
Yeah. Delegate Simon?
Question for council on this one, on the way, in section B, we changed 1 member to 2 members for 3-year terms. I'm wondering if it's necessary to have that line amendment in there. I don't know that it hurts, it just is a little confusing, because I think whatever new member we add is going to come on for a 4-year term. Is that the intent of the bill, for the new member to come on for a full 4-year term?
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Simon, I can't speak to the intent, but if you would like an amendment, or if the patron would like an amendment, we can definitely do that.
Yeah, I guess because thereafter, and we are, more than 3 years after July 1st, 2011. Delegate Simon, do you have a motion?
So, Mr. Chairman, I would move a line amendment that we strike the change. I don't have the PDF version of it. I can pull it up real quickly, but so on line.
Before you make your motion, I think we might be able to get some additional clarity from the administration.
Thank you. Sorry. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I think this is a technical piece that allows for staggering of the board. So the first year would be for a 3-year term, and then appointments after that would be for the full 4-year term. It just puts that staggering in so you don't have too many members rotating off at once.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Delegate Simon.
Okay, I'm looking at the same sentence as you are, I guess. My question is, so is this new member going to come on for a 3-year term or a 4-year term?
Sorry, I was not here to speak on this bill, Mr. Chairman and members of the
You are
committee.
now.
So I'm going to look at that real quick and figure that out. But I think what it's doing is when that new member gets added, 2 members, right? 2 members for a term of 3 years. It's just putting that. You may.
I mean, it seems like we would already be staggering at
No, we
current
do
and
need to
present.
put in a staggering provision. I'm not sure that the way that it was done is the clearest way to do that, since the board has previously been staggered. But essentially, in practice, that's what it would do, would be to put that member in for a term of 3 years, and then after 3 years, they would be eligible for 4, and anybody in that seat afterwards would be eligible for a 4-year term. Does that make sense?
Delegate Simon?
Not particularly. I think maybe the way what this means is that there were some slots, right? So you guys have some slots, and you know where you are in the rotation. You're adding this person to the last slot in that rotation, right? So you had people come in for a 1-year term. You had 2 members come in for a 1-year term, 2 members for a 2-year term, and you had at that time 1 member come in for a 3-year term. So you want to add, the person you're going to add is going to be coincident with that 3rd person that was added. Is that what the bill's trying to do there?
Yes, and again, I haven't worked on this bill at all, but yeah, so that person that gets added to this, there's 5 members now, we'd add an additional member when we make that appointment in July. We'd make it for a 3-year term, and then as the stagger, and then after that, they'd be for 4 years. And again, that would just ensure that you don't have too many members rotating off at the same time going forward. I think normally that would be put in as an enactment clause and say this seat shall be for a term of 3 years, and all appointments thereafter shall be for a term of 4 years. But
Counsel?
Mr. Chairman, so typically in newer code language, it is entered as an enactment clause, and so this was amended with language from the governor's office, but we can rework this and put it in an enactment clause to make it clear, and we can have that before the full committee if that works for everyone.
Why don't we do that? All right. Thank you very much. Delegate Mugler, depending on the disposition of this bill, will you just make a good faith effort to work with council to try and have a proper amendment ready for the full committee?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So with that being said, the committee operates by motion. We have a motion to report with a proper second, House Bill 1431. Members, please indicate your vote using the electronic voting board. Clerk will close the roll. Your bill reports out 8-0. Thank you, Delegate Mugler.
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Davis, your House Bill 140 is going to be incorporated into Delegate Aird's bill.
Yes.
I believe we did not do that because we passed both of them by, so I think an incorporation needs to happen first, right? We need to do that incorporation? All right, so let me get that one out. So I think we want to make a... Okay. Can we have a motion to incorporate House Bill 140 into House Bill 757 by Delegate Aird?
So moved.
Okay. We have a motion with a proper second to incorporate House Bill 140 into House Bill 757. I believe that is a voice vote. So all those in favor say aye. 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 All those opposed? All right. Your bill has been incorporated. Thank you, Delegate Davis.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I was honored to work with her on the wording last year, and I'd asked for it to be incorporated because she's been an amazing patron of this for years, and I hope to see it pass.
All right. Thank you, Delegate. Appreciate your time. Moving right on down the line, Delegate Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, before you is House Bill 982, and if I may, there are some line amendments that need to be made.
Wonderful. Please, while those amendments are being, Council will report line amendments.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. On line 40, after 54.1-103, strike additional training of regulated individuals, semicolon, reciprocity, and insert reciprocity, capital R. On line 42, after specifying, insert education, comma, experience, comma. On line 42, after training, insert a comma. And lastly, on line 146, after Virginia, strike or Romanet 2 and insert, comma, Romanet 2, the Board of Accountancy, or Romanet 3.
Ashley, can you read that last one again for me?
Needs to say.
Line 146, after Virginia, strike or Romanet 2 and insert, comma, Romanet 2, the Board of Accountancy, or Romanet 3. So it just puts the Board of Accountancy in between that series.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. Delegate Weber, are we doing anything with lines 81 through 92?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Van Valkenburg.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion for a friendly amendment to.
Well, let's first adopt these line amendments first, and then we'll be able to take up additional amendments. So, do we have a motion to adopt the line amendments as read? We have a motion.
Second.
And second. All those in favor say aye. 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 All right. Now, Delegate Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move that we cut out lines 81 through 92.
Okay.
So just remove them from the bill. And this is in consultation with the patron. So I think he views it as a friendly amendment.
Delegate Van Valkenburg, can you speak to the amendment?
Okay, yeah, speaking to the amendment. So this bill has a bunch of different parts to it about kind of standardizing reciprocity with certifications, and sections 81 through 92 are about work experience. So in lines 81 through 92, what would happen is if you were, say, an electrician in a state that doesn't have a certification or board a regulation process, you would be able to come to Virginia and get said reciprocity based on work experience. And so what this would do is take that out. So if you were an electrician in a state that doesn't have licensure, you would still have to go through licensure in Virginia to be the electrician. It would keep in the parts of the bill where if you're a electrician with licensure in Maryland and you come to Virginia, right, you would be able to get reciprocity on that licensure within the guardrails of the bill.
All right, so that is a motion, again, to strike lines 81 through 92 in the bill, House Bill 982. Do we have a second? Second. With a proper second, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right. Delegate Weber, can you please give us a fuller picture of what your bill does?
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Chair. So basically what the bill does is it's licensure by endorsement. And the idea behind the bill is to really speed up the ability of another business to come in that's already, say, licensed in Maryland, to come in and say that license be the starting point for at which that business can then begin to do business in the Commonwealth, provided they meet the criteria that are also laid out in the bill. And it gives DPOR the discretion to determine any additional, say you need a test, it's in the bill. So if you're I can't use architecture, but we'll just say architecture for applicable sake, it's you come in, you've got your license, but they also require just the additional exam. Then you would just take the additional exam. The starting point is you've already done a certain number of hours in business, and you're in good standing and all that other good stuff. It says, okay, you can do business in the Commonwealth, but now you've got to take this test. But essentially, if you come in from North Carolina and you're in good standing and you meet the criteria that are laid out in basically 54.1-103.1, then you can do business in the Commonwealth. And it's just the idea behind the bill is to speed it up. We currently actually have this precedent To streamline the licensing processes, it's already done in the medical field, and so the idea was to try and emulate it and do this in other fields and other occupations.
Questions for the patron. Delegate Simon.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I would ask the delegate, the struck through language on line 46. So currently, regulatory boards can do this if they want to, right? Regulatory boards are authorized to promulgate regulations recognizing these licenses and certificates. So what we're saying is that we actually want to just regulate this in the code as opposed to letting the DPOR promulgate these regulations at an administrative level. We're telling them how they have to do it. Is that right?
So what we do is we start with the license first, and then if there's any additional safety measures or training or education, then they can add that on. But yes, we start with the 1 through 9 on 54.1-103.1.
All right. Thank you, Delegate. Please try and refer your questions to the chair. Delegate Tran.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for the patron.
Delegate Tran.
Thank you. Delegate Wiebert, during my first term here, I thought we were taking this on a case-by-case basis in terms of which either occupation or license, and I was wondering, this seems to be a very broad stroke, and your thoughts, and I recognize and really respect the idea of just making it easier for people to jumpstart their careers here in Virginia if they're moving, but your thoughts in terms of allowing the individual regulatory boards to determine if this is the right path for their particular occupation versus the broad stroke.
So the idea is to, again, Mr. Chair, to streamline the process so that you start out with a license that's already in another state. If DPOR, if the board feels that there needs to be additional criteria there, they may add on to those in regards to education, in regards to test taking, etc. But what we are trying to do is to, again, streamline. So say you have the spouse of somebody who moves into here and they have a license in North Carolina, they can begin that licensure process with their license and then move from there so that they don't have to start the entire process all over again coming to the Commonwealth.
All right. Thank you, Delegate Webert. Anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of House Bill 982, please come to the podium.
Ben Knotts, Americans for Prosperity. Virginia is the #1 place in America right now for business, and people want to come here. So we need to welcome them. If they're legal and ethical, this streamlines the process right across the board for everybody. We can trust our boards with this responsibility. They're going to do a good job, and we hope you'll pass the bill.
All right. Thank you. Anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to House Bill 982? All right. Delegate Webert, any final words?
Please pass the bill.
Yes, please.
Well, committee operates by motion. We have a motion to report with a proper second with the amendments, House Bill 982. All those who wish to vote will do so on their electronic voting board. All right, we will close the roll. Delegate Tran. All right, now we'll close the roll. Your bill reports out 6-1, Delegate Webert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Next up, Delegate Aird. Do we want to take care of your incorporated bill?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'd like to have the amendment in the nature of a substitute reported.
All right, Brooks is going to be passing out a substitute for us. Could you tell us what's different between your original bill and the substitute, please, Delegate Aird?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. The changes that are made in this substitute is to address the concerns raised by two entities of local government and to ensure that the sensitive positions that are listed in the state section of the bill under lines, I should say section C and D mirrors that in the locality section, which present itself in lines 47 through 51. All
right, thank you, Delegate Aird. Do we have a motion to adopt the substitute? So moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All right, Delegate Aird, please tell us what your bill does.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. House Bill 757 is a bill that addresses, or is commonly known as, ban the box. The Commonwealth of Virginia has too long been a state known for its discriminatory practices and policies that keep barriers in place that limit the progress of the very people and families we serve. This has been evident in employment practices, social issues, and particularly regarding restoration of rights. Specifically as it pertains to employment, House Bill 757 would prohibit state agencies and localities from including on any employment application a question inquiring whether the prospective employee has ever been arrested or charged with or convicted of any crime, subject to certain exceptions. In addition to that, it really allows individuals who are trying to rebuild their lives and have a fair chance at getting past the first hurdle, which in most circumstances is a job application, to be considered equally and fairly. And then if an entity is trying to consider their criminal history, it's able to do so at a later point in the process. That is the bill, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you very much, Delegate Aird. Any questions for the delegate? Delegate Simon?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, but I'm having a hard time understanding, and maybe I don't know if this is for you or for the drafters of the substitute, but Section B on line 22 through 25 of the substitute, the first sentence and the second sentence, I'm just not sure how they relate to each other. The first sentence is, no state agency shall request a prospective employee to complete an application that includes a question inquiring whether they've been arrested or charged with a crime, but then goes on to say this prohibition shall not apply to employment-related applications or questions, oh, I see, provided after a staff interview. I got you. So
this is speaking to the element later in the process. If they're offered a conditional element of employment, then they can.
Thank you, Delegate Aird. Yeah, sometimes reading it out loud helps you get it, so thank you.
All right. Thank you, Delegate Simon. Any others who wish to ask? Delegate Miaris.
Mr. Chairman, permission to ask the patron some questions. Is that all right, Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Delegate, and ask your series of questions.
Delegate, I know we've talked about this before, and I know I'm looking at, and this is an issue actually I've looked at myself, but I'm looking both in an article from the Atlantic magazine and from Brookings Institute, which is left of center, about some of the three questions I always kind of look at when I look at a lot of legislation is, what's the problem you're trying to solve? What does your bill solve the problem? And three, the law of unintended consequences. And Brookings Institute said that they have looked at this, that actually it has had, the quote here is, ban the box does more harm than good, that it actually ends up hurting more than it that helps. And I don't know, how do you feel like this legislation addresses some of the concerns? I know you and I have talked about it before. And
I was so hoping you were going to bring these questions up, Delegate Miaris, because I've done extensive research on the matter. So you're referencing an Atlantic article, but if you do additional research, there's also information from the Brenner Center. There's also information from the Wharton Public Policy Institute at the University of Pennsylvania that rebuts those references and makes not only an example that the data is inconclusive, but if you look specifically at the Brenner Center for Justice data, which is more recent than that Atlantic article that you're referenced, it also makes the point that if we're looking at, and I'll read you because I don't want to misquote, it also makes the case that if the goal of ban the box policies is simply to improve employment outcome for those with criminal histories, then the policies are a major success, with almost all researchers finding overall increases in employment for individuals with criminal histories. Now, if you try to bring that out by categories of people, yes, there is data that reflects it has varying impacts, but the overall study shows that ban the box policies are impactful. There are 35 states and 150 localities that have also adopted ban the box policies that have varying data that shows when you look at the data overall, it has a positive impact. So if we're trying to move in a direction to give people a fair shot, then ban the box does not have a harmful impact, generally speaking. And I'm happy to provide you with these references.
Delegate Miyares?
I guess permission to ask a follow-up question, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Miyares.
I guess from a clarification specifically, and what I'm seeing is, at least the data I've seen, I'm looking forward to seeing it is, yes, it is definitive that it does help those that have been previously convicted of crime to be able to find gainful employment, which is obviously a goal that we all have. But then it also has a side effect that if you break it out to African Americans, it has a side effect of a negative impact. That's what Brookings was concerned about. Is yes, in one category it helps ex-felons of all stripes, of all races, of all backgrounds, but then on the other side, it also could potentially hurt African Americans in the general population. And I don't know, and maybe you could clarify or provide for me some of those data points of, you think you said the University of Pennsylvania, whether they've shown the larger kind of impact.
So I will do you one further. What I'm happy to provide you and the rest of the members of the committee is Terry Ann Craigie. She is also completing a report that will be available later this year that not only addresses the references that have been made in previous studies that are specific to black men and how especially younger ages have been impacted by ban-the-box policies. And when the data came out that showed that they do more harm than good, I have read several references that initially said the data was inconclusive for that subset of individuals, and the data and the research that she's doing right now will show that in the public and private sector, which accounts for 15% of all jobs, the ban-the-box policies increase the odds of public employment for black men with criminal records by 30%.
Delegate Miyares? And that's the T. Anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of House Bill 757?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Dominique Martin, a policy research analyst with New Virginia Majority. Just wanted to come here and express our strong support for this bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Carol Rauschberg, Department of Human Resource Management. The administration supports this bill. It already applies to state government employees. We banned the box a number of years ago, and it codifies the governor's executive order from 2015.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon again to all of you. My name is Reverend Rosalind Hall. I am a member of New Virginia Majority and the community advocacy organizer for Court Watch and for those criminal justice arms in which we support. As I mentioned earlier, I'm also the chair for Prisons and Jails for the Baptist Ministers Conference. On a personal note, I myself have been a successfully reintegrated citizen here in Virginia for 41 years. And I will tell you now that if I apply for a position and I have to put a check beside the box that I had a previous criminal background, there would be some repercussions for me after 41 years. So I am definitely in support of this bill.
Great. Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, Phyllis Sirico from the Virginia Association of Counties, and I wanted to thank the delegate for working with our organization and the Virginia Municipal League. We had some initial concerns about the language as it applied to localities, and the substitute takes care of our concerns, and we thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon again. Christopher Rashad Green. Speaking as a community member, as somebody has a formerly incarcerated person, there were times where I couldn't even get a job at McDonald's because I had to check the box. And this went on for 20, 30 years. Thank God if it wasn't for my employers, present and past employers who hadn't checked that box, I probably wouldn't be here before you now because they saw the value I had. And so I think that's what Ban the Box does. It allows employers, and employers gain by this because you can actually see a person and see their worth rather than seeing the box. And so that's why I support this bill, and I thank the delegate for support putting it out here, a long time coming. And the anxiety that we feel as returning citizens when we see that box, it gets to a point where we get discouraged because you don't even want to fill out the application because there's a box there. And that's that data that people don't see. We can look at all the other numbers, but that data, that real life data that I experience, and unfortunately my members, I have several members that were coming today, but they're working. They don't want to lose their jobs because they don't have to go through that. but I'm speaking for thousands of individuals, and I hear these stories every day, year after year. So I'm speaking for hundreds and thousands of other individuals as far as myself. Please, I support this bill, and make sure you pass it, please. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'm Michelle Gaddy, the Virginia Municipal League. I just want to echo the Virginia Association of Counties comments. We thank the delegate and Delegate Davis both for working with us.
Thank you very much.
Hello, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I want to thank Delegate Ayer for putting forth this bill. I'm Taia Mallory, a member of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women. We're a national organization with 5 chapters here in Virginia, and we are in support of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody here to speak in opposition of House Bill 757? All right, Delegate Ayer, any final words?
Mr. Chairman, I would just say that since first getting elected, I've been working on this bill, and I've heard a number of stories of how important this is in the lives of so many individuals, and I would just urge the committee to pass the bill.
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Simon.
Mr. Chairman, I really applaud the effort that Delegate Ayer has made over the years to do this, and I know that there's a number of bills this year that a number of us have been working on year after year after year. And we're sort of used to seeing a long line of opponents for some of these bills, and somehow those lines have evaporated. So I would move with that to report this bill.
All right, we have a motion to report with the substitute. That has been properly seconded. House Bill 757. Members, please indicate your preference on the electronic voting board. Clerk will close the roll. Delegate, your bill reports out 5 to 1.
I thank the committee.
All right, Delegate Samira, thank you for waiting patiently.
You're welcome. Good afternoon. Yep,
Good afternoon.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Do you have any amendments or substitutes,
yes,
Delegate?
I do. I do have an amendment in the nature of a substitute that will be distributed, I believe.
All right. As Ashley distributes the substitute, can you please tell us what is different between your original bill and the substitute?
Sure. The changes are to make sure that we are covering all investigations that are all complaints that are received for investigation that are properly received by the Attorney General's office in particular with regarding to the Virginia Human Rights Act. So it adds the option to refer to another agency if the Attorney General's office cannot investigate it themselves, or if there's another body that is to investigate it more properly. So, for example, in the case of housing complaints, they would be referred to the Housing Authority. Second line clarifies, it strikes out applicable statute of limitations and just replaces it with practices instead. Legal language changed there. And then the third line, or any other applicable state or federal, that is to clarify that they can send it off also to other state or federal agencies with regards to their function as a Attorney General's office. You're listening? Okay.
No, we were listening too, Delegate. Thank you. The only question is, and we certainly appreciate, the intent behind the bill to want to further clarify in matters not only relating to the Division of Human Rights, but also the Virginia Human Rights Act. Let's first see if we can adopt the substitute, because it's my understanding too that you also have line amendments to the substitute. Correct?
Yes.
Okay, we're having fun here this evening. All right, so
yes.
Can I have a motion to adopt the substitute?
Move to adopt.
Second.
And properly seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, your substitute has been adopted. Now let's talk about your line amendments, Delegate Samira.
Sure. I also have the Attorney General's office here for technical clarification
Okay.
as well.
What are your line amendments, or counsel, do you have line amendments to report? Brooks, thank you.
So the first line amendment on line 16 of the substitute, after seek, it's struck, insert, comma, or refer to another agency. Second line amendment on line 16 of the substitute, after practices, strike, that are filed with the applicable within the applicable statute of limitations period and allege a wrongdoing covered under the. Third line amendment on line 18 of the substitute, after et sec, close parentheses, strike, or any other applicable state or federal. The fourth line amendment on line 19 of the substitute, after conciliate, comma, strike, refer to another agency. And finally, the fifth line amendment on line 21 of the substitute, after practices, insert under the Virginia Human Rights Act, section 2.2-3900 et sec, close parentheses.
Okay. Can we have Delegate Fowler? Do you wish to speak?
Yes, sir. I have a question.
Delegate Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I am looking through here and now I can, let me see. Starting on line 63, where it defines unlawful discriminatory practice, includes conduct that violates any Virginia or federal statute or regulation governing discrimination based upon race, color, religion, national origin, sex, pregnancy, marital status, et cetera, et cetera. And so, I just asked the patron, Mr. Chairman, does he have any kind of a definition of what might be an unlawful discriminatory law, code, or that would violate someone's religious beliefs?
Delegate Samira?
So I do want to clarify that section was added as part of another confusion that happened with Delegate Simon's bill for Virginia Human Rights Act. That's not the major point of this part of the legislation.
Mr. Chairman?
Delegate Fowler?
I'm reading from the substitute.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and it looks like it is part of the bill.
I see the same, sir.
Yeah,
Delegate Samira, I really hate to do this. Delegate Simon will be able to further explain, but considering the substitute and the line amendments to the substitute, we have some questions about whether or not you are adding too much that's in a different part of what the bill originally stated, which was the Division of Human Rights, and now, we're into the Virginia Human Rights Act, and so there could be, hold on one second, Delegate. So there could be questions about germaneness in the future, and also Delegate Simon has an incredibly long docket in the immediacy that is going to be dealing with a lot of these issues. So I will yield now to my Vice Chair, Delegate Simon.
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Samira, unfortunately, that's sort of the way our rules of confidentiality work out. We didn't have a chance to see this until you brought it forward and we got to move the substitute. But Delegate Hurst is right. This actually bumps right into a big comprehensive bill that we're about to tackle in the next subcommittee. We probably could have had it re-referred. So we tried earlier, Delegate Bulova and I, to make sure that all these bills that touch this section of the code ended up in the next subcommittee, the one that we're going to start in, 3 minutes ago. And so what I would suggest we do here, and then the second point is that I do think when you expand and add new titles to that, you become vulnerable potentially on the floor and later on in the process to a question of whether the amendment's germane to the original bill that was introduced. And so what I suggest we might do, if it's okay with you, is take this by at least for the day, and then we can see if it fits in maybe for incorporation before we get to full committee with some of the bills that are going to be heard at the meeting later this afternoon. And again, I hate to do this to you and have made you sit there until we got this, but unfortunately, I don't see how we could act on this bill without knowing the outcome of what's going to happen with this afternoon's bills. And so, Mr. Chairman, that would be my motion that we pass this by for the day at the moment.
We have a motion to pass by for the day House Bill 11.
Mr. Chairman, can I comment real quick?
Sure, Delegate Samira.
Mr. Chairman, I want to strike out the definitions part entirely. That's not the point of this bill at all, and I'd leave that to Delegate Simon's comprehensive bill. Clearly, there was a lot of confusion with the creation of the comprehensive bill.
Mr. Chairman, if I might?
Yeah, Delegate Simon.
So I think what happened was that when you decided to go ahead and get into the Human Rights Act, I think there's probably some effort on some folks' part to try and conform what you were doing to what we're about to do. And so again, I think that looking at this one by itself in isolation is just not going to work given where we're going today. That doesn't mean this bill is dead yet, and I think we could carry it by for the week. And then once we've seen what we've done later this afternoon, we'll see what's left of this that maybe isn't addressed there and that might fit in and still be. So we're not killing it. We're just moving it by for a week so that we can have a better context and figure out if there's anything left that needs to be fixed, or if not, how we can incorporate it and get you involved in the other pieces of legislation.
Yeah, Delegate Samir, if it had just been the bill as originally written, we would take it up in this subcommittee, but we probably would have referred it to a different subcommittee if we had the substitute, before us at an earlier time. So we have a motion to pass by for the day, House Bill 11. Is there a second? There is a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, House Bill 11 has been passed by for the day. Sorry, Delegate Samir, and for any Attorney General's office staff who have been waiting patiently, but we're just trying to make sure that this is done in the proper way. So thank you, Delegate Samir. Delegate Guzman, Delegate Lindsay, you have two bills before us, including one administrative action you'd like us to undertake for one of your bills?
That is correct. HB 28, I'd like to have that bill stricken.
Okay, so the patron requests House Bill 28 be stricken from the docket.
So moved.
So moved and seconded. This is a recorded vote, so all those, please use your electronic voting machines. All right, clerk will close the roll. That bill is stricken from the docket. Delegate Lindsay, you also have House Bill 993. You prepared to present that for us too at this time?
We are, Mr. Chair.
All right, Delegate Lindsay.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, 993 is an administration bill. This is designed to have balance in terms of the representation across the spectrum of various boards and commissions. The alignment authorizing language is so that we increase from 18 to 21 the non-legislative citizen members of the Asian Advisory Board and the Council on Women. The bill removes the power and duty of the Council of Women to review and comment on budget and appropriations requests and grants application. The bill revises the purpose of the Council on Women with identifying ways in which women can reach their potential to advising the governor on matters pertaining to women and ways to improve their educational, professional, cultural, and governmental status within the Commonwealth.
All right, thank you, Delegate Lindsay, Mr. Chairman, and the subcommittee will note the enactment clauses starting on line 78. Any members of the committee or any members of the audience wish to speak in favor or in opposition of House Bill 993? Right behind you, Mr. Chairman. Hold on one second.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Kelly Thomason, Secretary of the Commonwealth. It's an administration bill. We clearly support it. We're not making any substantive changes with this bill, just some technical amendments to better align the four advisory boards.
Great. Thank you, Madam Secretary. All right. Delegate Lindsay, Mr. Chairman, I think it's a pretty self-explanatory bill. Committee operates by motion. Do we have a motion?
Move to report. Second.
We have a motion to report and second. House Bill 993. All members, please indicate your preference on the electronic voting machine. All right, clerk will close the roll. Bill reports out 6-0. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Delegate Guzman, sorry to make you wait for a little bit.
No, that's fine. Thank you for your consideration.
You have House Bill 581. Any amendments or substitutes for us?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right, then let her rip.
All right, Mr. Chairman. Well, this bill was actually brought up to a couple of my constituents who have been facing challenges while they go and try to interact with the state employees. I do not share the name of the agencies because I want to be optimistic and I want to look at the future. But and what I wanted to make people aware is that sometimes we have individuals who have to hide their identity just because they are afraid of being discriminated or are afraid to lose their job. Specifically in Virginia, based on a survey taken, 80% of participants have reported of experiencing harassment or mistreatment in a job setting because they were from the LGBTQ community. 20% of the participants lost their job, 26% were denied a promotion, and 44% were not hired because their identity was too obvious. What I'm asking, Mr. Chairman, is to the state of Virginia be the leader and follow the example of a few localities in Virginia that are already doing this and provide LGBTQ cultural competence training to help individuals and employees understand how to interact and handle different situations with LGBTQ individuals. The training will not only help state employees learn how to be better to react to other individuals, but also will help interactions between staff members, supervisors, or coworkers. The mandated training that this bill proposes is a core component of how to create a better culture that is inclusive and affirming of everyone in Virginia, regardless of their sexual orientation. The LGBTQ Virginia constituents are affected by discrimination when interacting with some Virginia agencies. And it's time that we change this. It has a cost of $25,000. It's asking for an online implementation to start next year. That state has 4 months, they can take it from January 1st through April 4th of 2021, and it will only cost $25,000. And I think with that, we will improve the life of many Virginians, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Delegate Guzman. Delegate Fowler.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a question, and I assume because we have to take the members here have to take a the sexual harassment class or whatever. Do I assume all state employees must take that? Is that correct? Is that
yes?
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Fowler. Delegate Fowler.
And so again, I guess my question to the patron, Mr. Chairman, would be.
Yeah, Delegate Fowler, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since all the state employees, I suspect, are, have taken and I assume passed the, whatever the sexual harassment policy, then I assume when they're on the job, they're just doing activities that are work-related. I guess my question to you is, why is this needed?
As I mentioned, Mr. Chairman, Delegate Fowler, I share with you some statistics about individuals. We have to be more inclusive. We are having Virginians that are facing discrimination in the job. This is not about getting a job. This is while you are in a job facing discrimination of who you are. Now, we have to look at individuals at the way that they perform the job, not of how do they identify themselves. I think this will help to avoid the bias that is against these individuals. These individuals have the qualifications to get the job, and it is not fair that they cannot be who they are just because they are afraid to lose their employment or not to get a promotion.
Delegate Miyares.
Permission for a question for the patron?
Delegate Miyares?
The bill talked about cultural competency. Is there anywhere in the Code of Virginia that defines what cultural competency is that we know of?
Maybe council would help in assisting for that, and maybe give them a little bit of time to do so.
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Miyares, nowhere that I can find in the code.
So,
Delegate Miyares?
So I guess the question is, we're adding a definition that's undefined in the Code of Virginia. And so how would you define what cultural competency would mean as far as the training?
What I would say to Delegate Miyares is that there are other models out there of localities in Virginia that we could actually work within and define them. But what I would say is that to state that there shouldn't be this training will be to not discriminate, and we can define cultural competence on LGBTQ. That's not something that could be a barrier. That's something that we could work on.
Thank you, Delegate Guzman. Just speaking to that question, I would imagine it would probably go through a similar process like a lot of things where we promulgate regulations. We'd leave it up to the department, and then once it actually gets defined, it would probably go through a review process, and there could be debate at that time for if proper cultural competency is addressed or not. Thank you, Delegate Guzman. Anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of House Bill 581 or in opposition?
Mr. Chairman, subcommittee members, Josh Hetzler, Legislative Counsel with the Family Foundation. We've asked, we FOIA requested every year for probably as long as I can remember for public employment, those complaints involving sexual orientation and gender identity. Now, we've either had an executive directive or an executive order, probably at least for the last 3 administrations that have actually included this language. So we do have good data on that. And never once has there ever been a founded complaint of discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity in state government. There have been probably around 5 or less each year on average, and all of them being unfounded. So there's that. But the second issue here is that, as Delegate Miar's question kind of brought out, we're talking about cultural competency, which is sort of something that is beyond the scope of what an agency would typically be helping a person understand. It really comes across more as indoctrination into a particular set of views. And in this case, many of these terms are really nebulous terms that strike me more as a worldview, almost a religious doctrine, than it is a settled science or something that's commonly known. So with that, I'll just really say that this probably doesn't belong for a number of reasons here, although certainly standards across the board of how we treat people kindly, politely, we all get along. Even if it was saying, here are the policies you need to follow, and let's talk about them, that would of course be acceptable. This is something beyond that that's really saying this is how you ought to think about these things. And we think that's going too far. So,
well, let me ask you a couple of questions then. You said that it's been a standing executive order for the past few administrations. Would you not agree that sometimes administrations change and sometimes the political party in power will change too in the executive mansion?
Sure.
And would you also not say, too, that while there may not have been any unfounded or founded complaints thus far, that just because it has not happened in the past, that it doesn't portend that it couldn't happen in the future?
It could happen.
And what in the language of the bill itself do you think is nebulous itself or potentially religious indoctrination specifically? I'm curious. Or not settled science?
Mr. Chairman, a number of terms are not defined in here, and they would be new to the Code of Virginia, including gay, bisexual, transgender, or lesbian, queer. These terms are undefined. And I think if you asked, as I have, many people in the very community this is describing, you get a whole lot of different answers as to what these are. It's very unclear. And one wonders if this involves training about pronoun usage that some might be compelled to use, that they may disbelieve, that they may not feel comfortable for religious or otherwise reasons. So it's very unclear. And I would ask the patron to please offer an explanation of what transgender means, of what queer means, because I think there is not a consensus.
Delegate Simon?
Mr. Chairman, it sounds like the witness could use some cultural competence training, and he'd probably become more familiar with those terms and what they mean and what they refer to. So that would be my response. And Mr. Chairman, I would move that we report and refer this bill to appropriations.
We have a motion to report and refer this bill to appropriations with a proper second. So all those in favor or opposed, please use your electronic voting machine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Clerk will close the roll. The bill reports out 4-2. Thank you, Delegate Guzman. All right, Delegate Ranson. Delegate Ranson. We passed your bill by for the week last week, and so now we have your House Bill 950. You have any amendments or a substitute for us?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I do have a substitute.
All right. So while Brooks is handing out the substitute, if you could please, Delegate, explain the difference between the original bill and the substitute.
Certainly. You'll notice on lines 17 and 18, and I have the PDF version, so it may be different numbers. I can give just a brief update. Again, this is about historic Christ Church. It was completed in 1735, so it's a National Historic Landmark in Lancaster County. And in 1958, the Foundation for Historic Christ Church was created to restore the building and offer educational programs about early life in Virginia. Presently, they have 90 volunteers. They have nearly 10,000 visitors yearly to the church and the grounds. But the foundation also maintains a burial ground with 500 sites left available. They may receive funds from the burial sites, but mostly from the foundation's fundraising endeavors. So what this bill seeks to do is just exempt themselves from the code, from DPOR regulations. So just to make sure that I'm meeting some of the questions that you all had last week, I wanted to make sure that the language was sufficient enough just to meet some of the concerns that you had. So we put in there, for the purposes of this subsection, to identify that, one, they are a church and it operates as a historic landmark.
All right, thank you, Delegate. By adding that, well, first off, a motion to adopt the substitute?
So moved.
And with a second? All those in favor of adopting the substitute say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, now that we have the substitute before us, so we have some provisions of the chapter, about who the affected churches will be. Delegate, do you consider this now with the substitute to be special legislation?
I do not consider this to be special legislation.
Okay. Any members of the committee have any questions for the patron? We heard this extensively last week, and I do appreciate you bringing in Mr. Broadus last week to be able to testify. Anybody else here to speak in favor or opposition of House Bill 950? All right, seeing none, the committee operates by motion. We have a motion to report House Bill 950 as substituted with a proper second. Members will please vote using their electronic voting machine. The clerk will close the roll. Delegate, your bill reports out 6-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Thank you. All right, Delegate Runyon, glad to see you. We were wondering when you were going to show up.
Well, Delegate Hurst, I apologize. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
It's all right. You're still here in time.
We ran over quickly.
You're fine. You're fine. I just wanted to see your face, so I'm glad you're here with us.
Yeah, part of the Chris caucus here, I couldn't do without you.
That's right. That's right. So, House Bill 850. All right. Delegate Simon is ironically telling us to hurry up. So please, Delegate Runyon, tell us about your bill.
Well, what I'd like to tell you about the bill is that I met with staff and we had a wonderful conversation, and they have already achieved the results here recently of what the JLARC study requested, and we also had additional conversations about how some things we can work forward with in our part of the world, and so I would ask that the bill be laid on the table.
Okay. We will do that. Okay. All those in favor of laying this bill on the table will do so using their electronic voting machine. All right, Delegate, I'm liking you more and more every day.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. Finishing up, Delegate Miares.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I present from the dais, or would you like me?
Your preference, sir.
Okay, I wouldn't mind I present here. Just for reference for everybody in the committee, we were here last week about HB 606, which would create, with the Department of Criminal Justice Services, an online module for human trafficking training. There were some questions of whether it was seen with the language as voluntary or mandatory. We reached out to Department of DCJS to get their impression. They are neutral on this bill. They indicated in an email to us that they were already in the process of developing an online training module themselves. I would make a note that we did get last week. I did not have the fiscal impact statement. I do now. I think the way the fiscal impact reads it is it's mandatory, which is $100,000 to $150,000 cost. So it may behoove the committee maybe to refer to appropriations. Be my guess.
We do have that letter from the Speaker, Delegate Miyares, so already taken care of. But while it is still in the process of being developed, you would still like for it to be the pleasure of the committee to report the bill?
If it would be the pleasure of the committee, yes. I still think it is necessary. While you have some larger entities that do their own online training, I'd like to have something that we could develop online for smaller entities to be able to have access to that.
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Simon.
Move to report and refer to appropriations.
All right, we have a motion to report and refer to appropriations with a proper second, House Bill 606. All those who wish to vote, please do so on your electronic voting machine. All right, and the clerk shall close the roll. That bill reports and refers to appropriations 6-0. Thank you, Delegate Miyares. The only bill that we still have left on our docket is by Madam Chair Jawan Ward, who I do not see, but I know that Labor and Commerce is very busy, as are we this afternoon. So
move to pass by for the day.
I appreciate that. Move to pass by for the day. House Bill 394 with a proper second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right. With that, our docket for today's Professions, Occupations, Administrative Process Subcommittee